got the legislation that we needed that makes reference specifically and clearly to single payer, that also in addition makes specific reference to using the Canada Health Act as a guiding principle. Those are elements that we needed to see in there in the legislation.
Welcome back to Question Period. As you heard there, they got their deal. The feds will introduce Pharmacare legislation this week as their deal with the NDP stipulates they have to, and it will be exactly what the NDP wanted, according to New Democrats. Not only will it include a framework for single-payer universal system, but it'll also cover diabetes meds and contraceptives. Is this a victory lap for Jagmeet Singh after threatening to pull out of the deal over the last few weeks, or was it always a fait accompli? With me now to talk about that is the Scrum. Shachi Kurl is president of the Angus Reid Institute. Rob Benzie is the Queen's Park bureau chief for the Toronto Star, and Joël Denis Belvance is the Ottawa bureau chief for La Presse. Hi, everybody. Very good to see you. JD, I'll start with you. It's been weeks now of the prospect of the NDP and the Liberals ending this deal over the potential for this legislation. Did you ever think it actually would break apart, or was this kind of a fait accompli in your view?
There was a small chance that the NDP would pull out, but it wouldn't change the dynamics in the House of Commons, in my sense that the NDP would pick and choose, the confident votes that they would support the Liberals, namely the budget or other stuff, but they would continue to dance, if I may say, with the Liberals in the House of Commons. Now, with this announcement, the political drama that I was expecting this week is over even before it began. But for one thing, it means that there's no federal elections in the offing for this year, unless an accident happens. It may still happen, but did the NDP got what it wanted? Maybe some attention, but other than that, I don't think they can claim a victory because there's no money provided in the legislation that is expected to be tabled and no time frame. So it's a bit of a vide, if I may say, a vacuum.
Right. Rob, look, on the first part of what JD mentioned, the lack of money, the NDP has said for a long time now that's not what the deal was necessarily for. It was to get that introductory framework legislation introduced. But to the other point around there not being a timeline, I mean, that would seem to draw some implications politically as well, right? It's okay to have a framework, but if there's no idea of when it might be implemented, how much of a political win is that?
Well, exactly, Vashi. I think they have to have something in place by the October 2025 election. That I still think that's when they're going to have the vote, and so it buys time for Mr. Trudeau's Liberals. It also is a symbolic victory, I suppose, for Mr. Singh's New Democrats, because frankly, even if they had scrapped their supply and confidence agreement with the Liberals, I'm not sure we would have had an election, because there's 20 Bloc Québécois MPs who will qualify for pensions. Their 6-year eligibility is October 2025. So there's no interest in the Bloc to have an election. So I think it was always a bit of an empty threat, but at least I guess Mr. Singh is salvaging his pride, if nothing else.
Shachi, to what degree, if the message from Mr. Singh is, hey, we're the party who is going to be able to deliver on Pharmacare and got you universal Pharmacare, to what degree does that message resonate with Canadians? Do they care a lot about this issue?
So it's going to resonate with his own base. This was, if nothing else, an important performance point or proof point for Jagmeet Singh to go back to NDP voters and say, see, I did it, I got it done, which would have looked pretty bad if he had had to either keep moving that deadline back over time to his own base or simply wasn't able to achieve that. This really was kind of the fig leaf that both Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau needed to cover themselves with around CASA, because right now any talk of an election would have been really problematic for the NDP. The vote situation right now is so fluid, and it will ultimately funnel down to two choices, either Pierre Poilievre or Justin Trudeau. It would not have spelled good news for Jagmeet Singh, even with him being able to run around waving his Pharmacare deal in the air. Voters wouldn't have thanked him for it ultimately. So this keeps everything moving. It gives both of these leaders, the cover they need to keep the CASA going.
It keeps the CASA going, certainly Shachi is right. Is that necessarily a good thing for the NDP, though?
That's a big question, and that's a problem for the NDP. They've been trying to get the credit for the other things they got done, like the national dental care programs or the sick leaves, sick days off for employees who work under companies that are under the federal charter, or I think anti-scab legislation. But whenever they talk about it, it's the Liberals that we get in mind who have the credit. So that's a big disappointment for Mr. Singh, and that's probably why Ed Broadbent, the former leader who passed away, of the NDP who passed away, mentioned that there should have been a stricter timeline for the deal that they had with the Liberals, maybe a year, so maybe they could renegotiate something and take away the credit they had within a year and try to distance himself before the next federal election.
And I think also how to continue to kind of justify the idea that they are keeping the government in power through this agreement, Rob. It was part of the question, the back and forth between myself and Mr. Singh, when I sort of recounted to him like 10 different quotes from his tweets in which he is depicting the Prime Minister as a bad leader. He's checked off most of the deal now. And I asked him, like, what's the point in sticking in it? And he said, well, I got to make sure dental care goes through. I got to make sure Pharmacare goes through. Like, is that a sellable message to Canadians ultimately when there is an election?
No, and we know from experience of the Liberal Democrats in the United Kingdom, from the New Democrats here in Ontario 35 years ago, that junior partners in these types of arrangements seldom do well in the next election. The Liberal Democrats in Britain haven't come back yet from their agreement with the Conservatives in 2010. So I think this is something that, I mean, it was a deal with the devil, I suppose, that Mr. Singh signed, but it did make the NDP relevant, and they've been the tail wagging the dog for 2 years now. And is that, if there were an election right now and Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives won a massive majority, the NDP would be, again, decimated, maybe fewer than the 25 seats they have now, and then they're irrelevant.
To be fair, though, the Liberals have leaned on, and I imagine will continue to lean on the NDP, Shachi, to advance their agenda behind the scenes. I mean, we see the front-facing stuff, but behind the scenes, the NDP supports them at committees and at a whole of other background stuff that gets their legislation through, essentially.
I guess the question ultimately is how much are Canadians willing to continue to accept the confidence and supply agreement and all of the things that come with it, just like you laid out. And for the most part, the center left in this country has been okay with it. We're going to be asking some questions about the continuation of it pretty soon now that we know that there's a deal. But, when you get into, is it fair or unfair? Is it good for democracy or is it bad for democracy? Two things occur. You see the vast majority of NDP and Liberal voters going, yeah, this is a pretty good deal, we're happy with it. And you see the vast super majority of Conservative voters going, this is terrible. Drop the writ. We are itching to be in an election period. We don't like this deal. We've never liked the deal. We feel like it robbed us of a victory that we coulda, shoulda, woulda had, and get on with it. So that is the cleavage that we've seen over the last year plus that we're going to continue to see. 2 years, my God, how time flies.
And there's still a long way to go. I'll leave it there. Thank you so much to Shachi Kurl, Rob Benzie, and JD Benholz. That does do it for us this week. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Vashi Capellos. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow on Power Play. Have a wonderful rest of your day.